All right, so I think we'll begin. So first of all, hi everyone, I'm Atar. I'll do the webinar today, and this is the Getting Started with Port session. I'm going to share a few slides for us to understand what we're going to talk about and to go over the agenda. During this session, feel free to ask questions in our chat, and I'm going to address these questions during the session, and also we'll have some time in the end for overall questions about the session. So don't be shy. The idea of this webinar is a getting started session to understand better Port, how to build and get started with the product. So let's begin. All right. So first of all, we're going to do an overview of Port and understand what are the main pillars of the product and why you should even use such a product of an internal developer portal. Then we'll move to the demo. The demo will be demonstrating the first steps of your IDP creation, of creating a service catalog in your organization. Specifically, we're going to connect to GitHub to bring services into the portal and also integrate with PagerDuty and Jira to bring tickets and incidents into the portal and create the first MVP of our portal with some data from our different tools. Once we do that and we'll understand a bit how the portal works, we'll talk about, okay, I now understand what we have and how it works, but where should I begin with? And what are the first use cases I should address when talking about an internal developer portal? And the last part will be mainly for Q&As that you have after the session. This session is also recorded, so you can also share it with your colleagues afterwards. So first of all, I'm Atar. I'm a solution engineer in Port, 26 years old. Originally, I'm a platform engineer. I used to be a platform engineering team leader for data infrastructure in a large enterprise company. So this is where you see the DevOps team lead part. I also was like a guide, a course manager to educate young engineers. And in my free time, I like playing. I'm a huge basketball fan. I love lifting, and my like the best drink I can think of is iced Americanos. I drink it twice a day. I actually had one now. So if you need a good recipe, let me know. And today I'm a solution engineer in Port, which means that I mainly talk with the different Port customers and trying to help them build in a portal in their platform engineering journey. So I'd be happy to also hear about your use cases and what brought you here today, and maybe address some of these questions in this session. So when we talk about Port, we talk about the right side, which is the platform, which are the platforms that you have today in your organization, you know, developers, and in general, the software part of your company needs to work with a lot of platforms, whether it is the cloud infrastructure, the service orchestration tools like Kubernetes or environment. And we have a lot of tools that we need to use during our daily routines. And when we say we talk about personas that are part of this lifecycle, which can be developers, which we usually aim our platforms to, but also AppSec management, SRE, CISO, and also managers. So we have all these personas that need to use all of these tools. And all of these tools have some sort of a learning curve and a lot of knowledge you need to know to really use them in the right way, in a standardized way, in the best practices. And it can get hard. You get to the point where you need to have knowledge for all of these tools, and you need to have an understanding of how to use them and to really leverage them to your needs. And this is where internal developer portal comes to like, this is the main need we need for these internal developer portals. It is like the bridge between the platform and your users and personas in your software organization. So this is the idea of internal developer portal. We want one place to manage all of our different resources, all of our different platforms, to self-serve upon them and to do stuff by ourselves. It should be some sort of an abstracted layer that presents all of the different tools I need to use during my daily routines. And also I can actually operate and do some self-service actions and do operation of these tools from this unified portal of my organization. And this is the main vision of a portal as we see it in Port. Now let's break it down to actual pillars, like what are the building blocks that we see as the main building blocks you should have in your internal developer portal. And this is where we talk about four main pillars. We have the software catalog, which is usually the first thing you begin with when talking about building an internal developer portal. A software catalog is an inventory of all of your software components, right? It can be cloud resources, microservices, Jira tickets, anything you feel like your developers, for example, would need to view and understand during their daily routines. This is what we feel like should be in a software catalog of a portal. Second one is self-service, where you can create self-service actions for your different personas, like creating a new cloud resource, scaffolding a new microservice, deploying an application to a certain environment, production, staging. So you have like your backend that actually performs the orchestration, whether it's Kubernetes, Terraform, and so on. But we want developers in a click of a button to do this operation. And behind the scenes, it will align to the standards and the automations we have by our DevOps or platform team. And this is the idea. And then we have two other pillars that are a bit more advanced. We have scorecards, which is like a metric system for you to measure the quality of your software components. For example, I want to make sure that my microservices are highly available and production ready, and also comply to our security concerns of the CISO and the security engineering team. So in Port, we can create some sort of scoring metrics, which we call scorecards, that will be measured upon our software components. So we want to understand whether our service is production ready. So we want to make sure that this service has the right documentation. And we want to make sure that the replica count and the architecture is well defined. So based on the software catalog, Port will automatically check the different scorecards and make sure that your software stays on track with your platform and DevOps team standards. And this is scorecards. And the last part is a really exciting one, which is workflow automation, which means that you can automate stuff as part of your portal, as part of your portal orchestration. Simple example, whenever I have an incident in PagerDuty, I want to create a Slack channel and have all of the people that are supposed to react to this incident in this Slack channel, having all the context about the incident coming live from Port, and then you can react and actually operate. So it's basically automations that are done upon changes in your catalog, done automatically based on how you configure it in the portal. So these are the four main pillars of Port. Since all of these are very, very enabling, it really gives us more freedom, it gives us more capabilities. And the idea here is that we give like a shift left to our users using the portal. We still want to make sure it is done with the right permissions, and we have some sort of a role-based access control on top of it. And this is why on top of all of these layers, we give you a very granular and easy to manage role-based access control layer, where you can manage who can see which view, who can run which operation, who can set which standards and who is in charge of it, and who can set rules for these different automations based on the different personas using the portal. So these are the main pillars of Port and the main building blocks. Today we are going to focus mainly on the software catalog part, and we might touch a bit on the self-service part just for you to understand how it works. So when I say we're going to work on the software catalog part, it means that we're going to really ingest data live into the portal and auto discover some resources from our engineering environment. So we're going to connect to GitHub, we're going to connect to PagerDuty and Jira, okay? Before I move on, I want to pause for 2 seconds and hear maybe if you have any questions, or maybe if one of you can share with us is using Port, or or any specific pillar that is relevant for you and brought you here to hear about. Cool. So I see there are no questions. Feel free to write during the session if you have any other questions, but let's move on. So now it's time for the live demo. I'm going to move to the actual port website, and we're going to build the portal from scratch and see how it works. So this is port. Welcome to port, and you can see here like a blank canvas with nothing. I started from the software catalog page, which is what we'll mainly focus on today. So what we want to do in port now, we want to start building our software catalog with data coming from the different tools we have in our organization. So let's start with one of the most common ones, which is Git, and let's connect GitHub to our environment. So what I did was I just clicked on the create a new data source button, and now I can see all the different integrations Port provides in an auto discovery way from my environment into port. So we can see some of these here, like Git providers, Git, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, Kubernetes Stack, cloud providers, infrastructure as code, incident management, and so on and so forth. And we can see that each one is part of a different routine and lifecycle that is relevant for our software personas. Whether it's security, feature management, alerting for SREs, costs for FinOps, and so on. Let's start with a basic one, which is GitHub, and install the GitHub application of Port. So what I'm doing now, I'm just connecting to my Git environment. I'm installing the application, and I'm choosing the organization I want to install it on. I can choose whether I want to install it on all repositories or only on specific ones to give access to. The access is mainly read and also the access of running certain operations, like GitHub workflows, if you want to trigger them from port. So I install the application. I'll do the two-factor authentication quickly. Cool. So looks like it's installed. Let's wait a few seconds, and we should see data in our catalog and pages created for us for the service catalog we're creating. Cool. So the first part of the service catalog building is completed. We can see that we have a few pages created for us in the software catalog page. The very main one is the service catalog. So for every repository, I connected, a new entity import was created with the title, when it was updated, and a link to the actual repo and the language from Git. I can also see the pull request from my environment being automatically populated over here. And some dashboards created for me, like the service dashboards with the language breakdown of my services. It is all provided out of the box. So GitHub is connected. And now I want to also connect other tools like, let's say, PagerDuty. So for PagerDuty, I'm going to use a different approach. What we did now in port for GitHub, we use the GitHub app, which is providing real-time updates from GitHub. Now I'm going to use one more approach, which is the scheduled approach that can be done using a GitHub action from your GitHub environment. So I'm coming to a GitHub repo I have here. And now I'm going to run an action that will connect my PagerDuty environment with my port environment. Basically, let's see what it means. I have my GitHub workflows over here, and I'm going to click on the PagerDuty YAML. This one is basically installing the GitHub integration in my port environment. It's just an image I'm running with my token for PagerDuty and the API URL of PagerDuty for me to connect with. It is all mentioned also in our doc, so it's super like copy-paste approach. And now, once I click on the GitHub Actions, I can run it to connect PagerDuty. Same thing for Jira. I have also a workflow that is connecting us to my Jira environment. So let's also run this one in parallel. And also let's do that for LaunchDarkly, because we also want feature flag management. So I basically ran 3 GitHub workflows that we can see that are running over here. Once it's done, we should see all the data in the catalog super fast. Port will provide us out of the box some catalog pages with the data of all these integrations. And we should see it all in a few seconds. So I can see that PagerDuty is done, which means that if I go now to the software catalog, I can see some pages created for me over here with data from my integrations. Let's look at PagerDuty incidents, and voila, we can see that I have here my PagerDuty incidents from my environment with a link to the incident, the urgency, description, and so on. I think Jira is also here. Awesome. So I have my Jira tickets over here and my Jira projects. I also have from PagerDuty my own call schedules and my services that are connected to real services. And I think we also should have feature flags over here. Cool. So now I have also my feature flags for my LaunchDarkly API. So basically now I have a software catalog with Jira, LaunchDarkly, PagerDuty, and the service catalog, which means that for me as a developer, I have all the information I need in one place without the need to have permissions or to jump between different tabs. Now let's organize it a bit, and it's super easy in Port to do that. I can just click on the new folder button, and let's call this one task management. For my Jira pages. Now let's create one more for feature flags. Sorry. All right. Now I can just put that here. And let's create one more for incident manager. Cool. So looks better. Now I have as a developer, some information from my organization in one place. Took us a few seconds. Now, some of the data that you see here, as you saw, can be integrated with the actual APIs of the tools with ports data sources. If I go back here, we can see these integrations installed in the data sources page, and I can install more integrations from different tools over here. But also, if you have an internal tool or an in-house tool, or maybe some backend you want to leverage into your portal, it's also possible. Port is an API-first product, which means that you can also ingest data straightforward into Port, like to the API. You can also use GitOps and to create YAML manifest that will give us data about certain parts of our organization, like business domains or teams and stuff like that. And we can also work with our Terraform provider to actually push data using Terraform. Now, important part of this building process we just did is understanding that we did it right now with ClickOps, but usually what we see is that the person who's building the portal is either a DevOps or platform engineer, which likes to work with Terraform or some sort of infrastructure as code tools. So just for that, we also created a Terraform provider, and I want to show it over here, which means that all of these things you just did in the import can also be done as code. You can really build a portal and configure it as code using our Terraform provider. For example, we have the integration resource, which allows you to connect different platforms into your portal and define it as code and manage the portal as a real production resource like any other cloud or a microservice resource you have in your organization. So it's really useful for you to treat that resource as code. I see that we have a few more minutes. I want to talk a bit about self-service and how it's built. Before that, I'm pausing for a few seconds to hear some feedback or some questions from our audience, if you have any questions. All right, cool. So what I showed now is just a small part of how you can get started with Port in a few minutes. Imagine that you can take that farther, and how farther you can take it, you can really see it in our demo environment, right? So you can come here and see some more complex use cases, some data that is more live and updated. And you can see also connection between different resources. So you can see a service connected to its deployments, pull requests, Jira issues, and so on. So you can really see a more advanced instance of Port and really take inspiration about where you can take this portal in your IDP journey. And let's talk now. So we created some sort of a visualization. We created the catalog part of our portal. Let's talk now about how we can provide self-service experiences for our developers using an internal developer portal. So we have our catalog, but it's not enough. We can go now also to the service self-service hub, which is like a shop for you to provide for your developers different operations to be done in one place. So I see we have a question. I'll address that in a minute. I just want to finish that part. So the self-service hub is like a shop for you to, as a developer, to see all the different operations you can do from the portal, like creating a new service, creating a new secret in GitHub, locking a deployment, creating a new S3 bucket in the cloud, enriching a service with more data, or maybe nudge my peer to approve my pull request because I'm waiting for a few days. So it can be anything that you feel like should be self-served to your personas in the team. And from here, we can really create a self-service experience for our developers. So we have one question asked over here. The question is, does Port have an API to fetch resources map in it? For example, if an open API file is added a resource, does Port provide an API with which we can use to fetch that resource? Yes. So I'll just show how you can do it with Port. So Port, as I said before, is an API first product, which means that any operation that you see here and also that you actually do in the portal can be done using the API. And we have an API reference where you can see all the operations we just saw in the actual UI. For example, if you want to fetch the data of a certain port entity, it is all accessible via the API, so you can really use Port also as a source of truth for your entire organization once the data is in, and really use the terminology and the framework you build in Port for other tools as well. I hope that answered the questions, the question you asked. Please let me know. Cool. So let's look at one example of self-service. This example, for example, is to create a new service. Whenever I need to create a new microservice in my organization, I need a repo, I need a CI/CD process, I need to connect it with my infrastructure. So these are a lot of stuff that me as a developer, I find it hard for me to understand how to do it right. So I need the help from my DevOps team to really provision some resources for me in a best practice as code with Terraform and with Helm charts to my Kubernetes environment. So here what we can do, we can just set up the self-service process. We start by giving the title, which is the actual things that the developer will see, scaffold service, and what it means as a self-service action. Next part is what the developers should feel as an input for my automation. And here, basically, I need my service name. And then the next part is the backend part, which means what my automation, once the developer clicks on execute, what automation will be triggered from that process. So in Port is like the abstraction UI layer on top of your infrastructure and platform orchestration layer. So that means that I can trigger a CI/CD process from Port or a backend, basically anything by an HTTP request that will perform the provisioning. For example, here what I want to do is to trigger a GitHub workflow that will actually create a new repo in my Git environment with all the needed structure and files and Terraform code, everything I need for my microservice in one operation for my GitHub workflow. And here I can define how to take the inputs from the developer and connect it with my automation. Last part is permissions. where I can choose who can run it. We don't want everyone to do everything, right? We want to make sure that only the relevant people will have permissions to run certain operations and have access to certain pipelines. So here you can really connect with your SSO environment and bring users and teams from your organization, and then choose who can run which action, and also enforce manual approval to make sure that some operations will be approved manually before they are being triggered. Cool. So I see that we have one more question. Oh, okay. I'm glad I answered the question. So that's supposed to wrap up our getting started process. I want to do one more slide. And just before I go back to the slides, I want to say that everything you just saw is accessible from our documentation, docs.getport.io, from the getting started process to all the integrations, the automations and self-services, a lot of examples and guides that we saw as part of our journey with different customers and best practices we see in the industry. So we took that and we brought that to end-to-end guides. For example, the process we just saw of scaffolding a new service, maybe creating new cloud resources with Port, and also visualization of Kubernetes, and also scorecards that we talked about earlier, and more. So this documentation has a lot of information and materials you can leverage. Last part is more of where to get started in general. So you know that you need a portal, you know that it will be valuable for you, but you want to understand where to begin with. So we created some sort of a triangle between three parameters. In general, in Port, we believe that you should think of it in a product approach. What does it mean? It means that you need to think of your team that is building the portal as a team that is providing an experience for users. In most cases, these users are developers, so we want to improve their experiences. So you need to really define their user stories and to think about their routines and how they are going to use this exact portal. So usually what we do, we think about their pain and how can we help them with today's situation. So what we want to do, we want to think of a use case that will involve three main points. High value, something that once we deploy, it will be used like a lot. High demand, if I now ask a developer what would he want, it should be that thing. And also something that we also have implemented or would be fast for us to get started with. I don't want to reinvent the wheel with something that my organization is not familiar with. I want to start small with an MVP. And these are the three rules we believe that should be part of your MVP. I also want to say that we have a tool that we created in our website to think about the use cases of your team and how you should build your internal developer portal based on these metrics. So you can really type there your use case, and then we will tell you how good or bad this use case is based on its metrics and how relevant it is for you. We have Jenny over here. Jenny, if you can please send here the link to this actual website where like the user story helper.
Yep.
Thank you. Awesome. So that was the part, that was most of the agenda for this webinar today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I want to say that I'm also available on LinkedIn and in our Slack community. I would be happy to talk with you guys about your platform and engineering journey in general and your IDP thoughts specifically. We are happy to hear more from you guys, and thank you so much for joining. I will now address any other questions that you might have for this session, and if not, we'll wrap it up. Thank you for listening. So if you have any questions, please type them and we'll address them.
Also, while you're here, I just want to remind everyone that we're having on next week, on Wednesday and Thursday, our portal talks. It's going to be 2 days of talks about Portal. We're going to have a lot of amazing hosts that are going to talk about everything portals, how you should configure them, how you should use them, real use cases from our customers. So I highly recommend you to register and come, and I will send you the link to the registration as well.
Awesome. So I see that we don't have any other question. Thank you so much for joining, everyone, and hope to see you again anytime soon.
Bye.